Alright, so this is a video that explains what to do after you initially deploy JetPatch. So let's go ahead and log in. When you first time log in, it will ask you to set up an admin password and accept the terms and conditions. Once you do that, you'll be presented with this screen. In order to continue, on the Windows side, you're going to need to add the WSUS server and then deploy a connector on it. And then after that, add it as a discovery source in order to get all the additional Windows servers that are already configured to that WSUS server. So how do you do that? Go over here into Platform Configuration. Go over here in the Servers tab. And under Server Actions, you go ahead and add Physical Server. Fill in the details for the WSUS server. I'm filling that in now. And save. Alright, so now we have the WSUS server here and it's untested. In order to deploy the connector, we need to create and assign a server account. This has to be an admin account that would be used to deploy the connector. How do you do that? Go into Settings, Server Accounts, Edit Credentials. You input the appropriate account here. Hit OK. And then you see it here on the second tab. Of course, you most likely only have one, so you'll see it immediately. Alright, so now I go back to servers. I can click on server actions. I can manage Antigua on server and go ahead and deploy the connector. There should only be one built in. That's the one you'll use. And you go ahead and apply. It will then ask you to assign an account to it. We'll use the one we just created, which is Windows account, and proceed. And then go ahead and continue. If you want to see recent activity, there will be the ability to open it. So you go ahead and click on Open, and you'll see it here. This could take a minute or two. Great, it is successful. So now we can go ahead and add it as a discovery source. Go over here under Settings, Add Discovery Source. Source type is WSUS. And then go ahead and just say the source name is the WSUS server. And then here under the IP address name, you put in, let's say I'm going to put in the IP address, test connection. It's successful, save. Great, so now this is actually in progress. What is this doing? This is running the discovery source scripts. There are a total of 3 of them. More information about exactly what those scripts do are on our Knowledge Center named WSUS scripts. How can you confirm that these scripts are running properly? You can do that over in the JetPatch activity side. How do you do that? Go back to JetPatch. Go to Endpoints, go to Activities. Filter on System. And you'll actually see it right here. If I filter it specifically on WinWSUS, you'll see that the first one, WSUS Get Updates, is in progress. That is what is pulling all the available patches. And then after that is getting the groups and computers in groups, which then actually gets your computer group information and the assigned computers in WSUS. And then there's one more, which then gets the update summaries, which then tells you what's the applicable status of the patches for your Windows endpoints. Once get groups and computers in groups and the other discovery source scripts are complete, you would then see all the Windows endpoints that are configured to WSUS in JetPatch. So typically this could take anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes, depending on how many endpoints that you have configured. Once those scripts, discovery source scripts, are complete, you actually can see here that's also currently running tasks. So once this is complete, you would then see all those Windows machines that are configured to talk to the WSUS here, and they would also be untested. So you would have to assign the appropriate account or create a new one if it's not the same admin account that you used for your Windows server, WSUS server, and basically just go ahead and then deploy the connector on it. Very, very similar as the WSUS server. Okay, that's Windows. Now what about Linux? Linux, you have two options. You can discover them through another discovery source. So you can go back to discovery sources and add your vCenter. Maybe you have some Linux endpoints through an Active Directory, through Azure, through AWS. This requires a read-only account and requires some firewall rules like 443. All that information is covered in our Knowledge Center as part of the environment discovery section under adding endpoints to JetPatch. This covers every single discovery source, as well as covers how to add non-discoverable endpoints. Okay. And basically it's the same thing. If you're doing it through a discovery source, you'll see the endpoints just show up here as untested. And you would assign the account on the Linux side, create the account here, assign it to the Linux endpoints, and deploy it. If you need to manually add a Linux server, you can do that through server actions, add physical server. Once you have your Linux servers deployed, you can also verify if they are running properly. Very similar to what you did on the Windows side. What do? Go back into JetPatch. Go to Endpoints, go to Activities. Filter on System. Let's take a look at, say, some of these CentOS machines. You can see that these are successful. Collecting endpoints, you can view the details and see that everything's pulling in appropriately. Now let's say there is an issue and you need to troubleshoot it a little bit. If there is a failure exit code, let's take an example with this endpoint that's failing collect endpoint updates. You can view details, get some information. We also have a nice Casey article that discusses what these exit codes mean, as well as some next steps that you can take, applicable both for the Linux side and on the Windows side, useful for the system tasks that we're doing, but also useful during remediation plans. All this is detailed here. This activity table is also where you would go for your activity tables, all things like that. So let's flash forward and say you have all your endpoints deployed. What do you do next? You need to create a maintenance schedule. So you do that under System. Create the appropriate schedule. Fill in the details. Once you have it created, you go ahead and assign it to your endpoints. So you go in here under Endpoints Maintenance. Then you go ahead, find your endpoints, and assign the maintenance schedule. Typically during testing, if you're doing on test endpoints, you can create a 24/7 maintenance window and assign it all the time. You kind of get the drill. On the grouping side, for your Linux groups, Linux and Unix groups, you can go ahead and create those groups here. And then you can go ahead, and that's under System, and then you can go ahead and assign them under Endpoints, Endpoints Groups. Find the filter on the applicable endpoints, so on and so forth, and then assign them to the appropriate group. This is on the Linux Unix side. On the Windows side, that is controlled through WSUS. So you'd have to make those assignments by default on the WSUS server. That's if you're using server client side targeting. If you change and modify your WSUS, you can do client side targeting, which then allows you to use group policy objects or registry settings to change it on the Windows side. That is also covered here in the Knowledge Center. That's part of the installing WSUS section here, specifically assigning endpoints to groups in WSUS. Okay, now you kind of have all that done. You want to set up your workflows. That's under System. There are some default ones. You can edit the existing ones, or you can create your own. For example, maybe you want to add one of our built-in reboot scripts, or you want to bring your own scripts. You can do that pretty easily here. You can view all tasks and scripts under the System. So you can view all the built-in tasks and then bring your own. And then on the script side, you can actually download them as well and actually view exactly what they do. So now you're ready to patch. So you go under Endpoints Management. You should see compliance data. You should see compliance data available here. That means things are being pulled in properly. So everything should look good here. You could also set up Endpoint Readiness to kind of make sure that your endpoints are ready to patch. There is a very good article on our Knowledge Center that talks more about setting up and configuring endpoint readiness. If you go ahead and search just that. It's located here. In addition, we also have predictive patching, so you can also make sure that there's no problems, or you can address those problems accordingly. So in this environment, I do have some things to fix. How do you create a remediation plan? Fastest way for a test would be to use the patches catalog, filter on the group you want to patch, select your patches, create the plan, group a patch, continue through, select the appropriate action. You can see the default workflow here. You can override it. You select the group and activate. And then as it goes through the process, you'll be able to see the real-time activities table here. So that was a quick crash course on kind of getting started, both on the deployment side as well as the getting started side. Highly recommend going through the deployment guide here that goes into it more in depth, which then naturally leads into the getting started guide, which talks a lot more detail about some of the things I just covered. In terms of troubleshooting, I talked a little bit about it when it came to the Activities tab, especially over System. I also talked about predictive patching and endpoint readiness. A lot of this is part of our patching checklist, so I highly recommend to kind of go through. But if there's other issues that are not obvious, maybe you're having a difficult time adding a discovery source like Active Directory or vCenter, we do have a pretty good logging system. You can actually generate in two ways. You can click on the support button here, which has a lot of the getting started guide that I showed a second ago, the patching checklist I just showed, general documentation, as well as being able to download logs. So you can download them here. There's also another place that you can download them, as well as view the logs from the UI. If you go over here at Platform Configuration, go under Logs and Alerts, you can actually search for failures here as well. Kind of see what's going on, view some details on this. You can also view logs here as well, or you can just download them here as well. When you are looking through logs, basically there's a few things that are very helpful. If you're going through a discovery issue, there are the discovery logs. Let me go ahead and show you that. So this is kind of what it would look like. Then you go under logs. You'd have your discovery log, which is, as I said, very useful for looking at things with issues with vCenter, Active Directory. Even if you have some WSUSH issues, it would show up there. If you're doing patching and there's a problem, the patching logs are also very detailed as well. This is, of course, optional troubleshooting. You don't need to do this. Instead, if you have a problem, these manager logs are critical for us to look at. So if you do come to us with an issue and you want some support from us, showing us the manager logs is very, very helpful. If there is a problem only with a particular endpoint, then what is very useful is connector logs. You can get connector logs in a couple different ways. From the UI, you can just download the individual connector log. Of course, all of this can be done on the individual endpoints. So if you're not able to deploy the connector on just one endpoint for some whatever reason, there are some additional steps or there's some problems. Again, all of that is logged as part of our troubleshooting sections on our KC. And with that, hopefully this was a good quick overview on how to get started. But let us know if you have any questions.